Imagine being trapped in the belly of a wooden ship, completely blind in the pitch-black Mediterranean, with literally a hurricane tearing the planks apart right beneath your feet.
Oh, it's just a completely terrifying scenario to even think about.
It really is.
Uh,
Before we dive into one of history's most dramatic nautical disasters, I want to offer a sincere, divine blessing for your day. May you find clarity, peace, and purpose in whatever storm you might be navigating right now.
that is a really beautiful way to start.
Thank you. Because today, on this deep dive, we are wading into the absolute definition of murky waters. We are looking at the Apostle Paul's perilous journey to Rome, which is detailed in the biblical text of Acts, specifically chapters 27 and 28.
Yeah, and we are drawing on some really comprehensive sources for this. We've got study Bible notes from both Holman and NAA, plus a specialized biblical commentary.
Right, which give us all this amazing historical context and geographical detail.
Exactly. And our mission today is to explore how this ancient text weaves together these huge themes, like the tension between human expertise and spiritual insight.
And the dynamics of leadership when everything hits the fan, basically. Plus, this whole concept of divine providence right in the middle of absolute chaos.
Because it starts in a very tense situation.
Yeah.
Paul is a prisoner.
Right, he's in chains.
Yeah. And he has been handed over to a Roman centurion named Julius. They are on a ship bound for Italy, but they are fighting the calendar.
Which is a big deal in the ancient world. They reach a place called Fair Havens on the island of Crete, but the sources point out it's very late in the year. It's actually past the time of what they call the fast.
Right. And the fast refers to the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur, which usually falls in late September or early October.
So autumn, basically.
Exactly. And in the ancient Mediterranean world, this was the absolute cutoff point for safe sailing. Once you hit autumn, the barometric pressure shifts violently.
You get these massive, unpredictable storm systems.
Yeah, so sailing didn't just become risky, it was considered practically suicidal.
So the clock has run out, and Paul, who again is a prisoner, steps up and actually warns the crew.
He does.
He tells them, in no uncertain terms, that if they keep going, the voyage is going to end in total disaster. Like loss of cargo, the ship, and their lives.
But the ship's pilot and the captain, they want to push on. They want to get just a little further up the coast to a much better winter harbor called Phoenix.
And Julius, the centurion, has to make a call.
Right, he's the guy in charge. And he sides with the ship's captain and the owner over Paul.
I mean, I have to play devil's advocate here. Isn't it completely logical that a Roman centurion would trust a seasoned sea captain over a religious prisoner? Like, why should Julius have listened to Paul in the first place?
It is so easy to judge Julius in hindsight. But you have to understand, Roman military doctrine, it is built entirely on hierarchy, rank, and practical expertise.
Right.
So to Julius, listening to a prisoner over the guy who literally owns the ship, I mean, that borders on a dereliction of duty. He is making a standard, pragmatic risk assessment.
But his risk assessment is missing a massive variable.
It is. What Julius doesn't factor in is that Paul isn't just a religious philosopher speaking from, intuition. Paul is a highly experienced traveler who has already survived 3 shipwrecks before this journey even began.
Wow. 3 shipwrecks already?
Yeah, but the consensus of the experts overrides him. They want comfort. They want that better winter port.
And it reminds me of how modern society often over-relies on technical experts while just totally ignoring moral or spiritual intuition. We just look at the data and ignore the gut feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
And think about a time you made a major life decision because the conditions looked perfectly smooth on the surface, only to realize you sailed right into a trap, because that is exactly what happens to them.
A gentle south wind begins to blow.
It's the ultimate deceptive breeze. They feel this soft wind and assume, hey, we have exactly what we need. Let's set sail.
It's the danger of assumptions right there. A smooth circumstance can give you this really dangerous, false sense of self-sufficiency.
And it lures them right out of their safe harbor. That seemingly logical decision pulls them directly into the mouth of a nightmare.
Because almost immediately, the trap snaps shut. That gentle breeze is obliterated by a hurricane-force wind called the Euroclydon.
Or the northeaster.
Right. It is a typhonic wind. It's a violent swirl caused by opposing air currents crashing down from the mountains of Crete.
So suddenly, they're not sailing anymore. The ship is just being dragged across the sea.
And the nautical details of how they try to survive this are just staggering. The ship is taking such a violent beating that they have to resort to extreme measures.
Right. First, they struggle to hoist the lifeboat aboard, which was trailing behind them and filling with water. And then they have to do something called frapping the ship.
Frapping is just this desperate last resort mechanical maneuver. They take heavy ropes or cables, pass them entirely underneath the hull of the ship in freezing water, mind you, and winch them incredibly tight on the deck.
Because the waves are hitting the ship with such concussive force that the wooden planks are starting to warp and separate.
Exactly. They're using these ropes to physically hold the ship together so it doesn't just burst apart.
Just imagine the sheer terror of that, the groaning of the wood, the screaming of the wind.
And on top of that, they realize the wind is blowing them directly toward the Sirtis sandbars off the coast of North Africa.
Which was basically a graveyard for ancient vessels, so they lower the sea anchor to try and avoid it. But how does that even work in a hurricane?
Well, a sea anchor isn't a heavy piece of metal that hits the ocean floor. In deep water, it's more like an underwater parachute.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they toss this massive Kansas cone into the water attached to the bow. It catches the currents and creates tremendous drag.
So it slows them down.
Right. It doesn't stop them, but it slows the drift. And more importantly, it keeps the bow pointed directly into the oncoming waves so they don't capsize.
But even with all that, they are totally blind. For days, they don't see the sun or the stars.
And in the ancient world, long before the magnetic compass, that means navigation is mathematically impossible.
They are entirely at the mercy of the elements. And this is where the leadership dynamic completely flips. The technical experts, the captain, the pilot, the soldiers, they are paralyzed.
The mechanical tools have failed. They stop eating. They give up all hope.
And right in the middle of this total despair, the prisoner basically becomes the de facto captain.
He does.
It's so striking to me because Paul doesn't just offer empty platitudes. He actually starts with a bit of an "I told you so."
Yeah, he really does.
He stands up and says, "Men, you should have taken my advice not to sail." Which is bold when the ship is literally sinking. But he follows it up immediately with a life-saving action plan.
Right. A crisis always reveals our deepest dependencies. When the technical tools failed, the sailors panicked because their dependency was on the ship.
But Paul's dependency isn't on the ship.
Exactly. He tells them to keep up their courage because an angel stood beside him and told him he must stand trial before Caesar in Rome.
Yeah.
And because of that, everyone sailing with him will survive.
Which brings up a really fascinating commentary comparison between Paul and the Old Testament prophet Jonah.
Oh, the Jonah contrast is brilliant. Both men were caught in horrific storms at sea, but their situations are total opposites.
Right. Jonah was actively running away from his calling. His disobedience actually caused the storm.
And he brought extreme danger to everyone on his ship. The sailors only found safety when they finally threw Jonah overboard.
But Paul is right in the center of God's will, even in chains.
Yes, and because he's in alignment with his purpose, his presence guarantees the safety of all 276 people on board.
So his spiritual leadership stabilizes their morale, but their physical reality is about to hit rock bottom, quite literally.
Yeah, it gets worse.
We jump to the 14th night of this endless storm. Around midnight, the sailors sense that they are approaching land, so they start taking soundings.
Dropping a weighted line into the pitch-black water to check the depth.
Right. First, it's 36 meters. Then a little later, it's 27 meters. The ocean floor is rushing up to meet them.
They were flying blindly toward an unknown coast. So terrified they're going to smash against the rocks, they drop 4 anchors from the stern, the back of the ship, and just pray for daylight.
But wait, why the stern? Wouldn't you normally drop an anchor from the front?
Normally, yes. But if you anchor from the bow, the ship will swing around in the wind and face the sea. By anchoring from the back, they keep the front of the ship pointed directly at the beach.
Ah, so they are setting themselves up to drive the ship straight onto the sand when the sun comes up.
It's a highly calculated maneuver.
But the professional sailors, the guys who actually know how to do this, try pull a fast one. They pretend they are lowering bow anchors, but they are actually lowering the lifeboat to abandon ship.
It is the ultimate act of selfish preservation.
It's exactly like modern corporate executives taking their golden parachutes and sneaking out the back door while the company sinks, leaving all the passengers to drown.
That is a perfect analogy. But Paul sees right through it. He goes straight to the centurion and says, "Unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved."
Which brings up this profound theological tension from the commentary. The intersection of divine sovereignty and human responsibility.
Right, because God had already promised they would survive.
So why does it matter if the sailors leave? If the outcome was already locked in, shouldn't they survive anyway?
You would think so. But the promise didn't negate the necessity of human action. God's sovereignty decreed the end result. But human responsibility, the skilled sailors staying, was the required means for that salvation.
And the Roman soldiers get it instantly. They don't argue, they draw their swords and slice the ropes, letting the lifeboat drift away into the dark.
Paul forces everyone to stay in the exact same boat.
And as dawn approaches, Paul does something incredibly grounding. After 14 days of sheer terror, he takes bread, gives thanks to God in front of all of them, and eats.
He assures them that not a single hair on their heads will perish. And it works. They are encouraged, they eat, and then they throw the rest of the wheat into the sea to lighten the ship.
So it rides high in the water for this final run at the beach. Daylight breaks, they don't recognize the land, but they see a bay.
So they cut the anchors, untie the steering oars, and make a desperate run for the shore.
But they miscalculate. They run the ship aground where two seas meet. The bow jams into the sand, and the stern starts being violently torn apart by the surf.
The ship is just disintegrating.
And right then, a new human threat emerges. The Roman soldiers realize the prisoners might swim for it. And in the Roman military, if a guard lets a prisoner escape, the guard pays with his own life.
The penalty is execution. So the soldiers come up with a purely logical solution. Kill all the prisoners right there on the sinking deck.
But Julius intervenes specifically to save Paul. He orders those who can swim to jump first, and the rest to grab planks.
And just as the vision promised, every single one of the 276 people makes it to land safely.
Surviving that violent sea is a miracle, but washing up on an unknown shore brings entirely new challenges.
It does. They find out they've landed on the island of Malta.
And the locals, who the sources refer to as barbarians just because they didn't speak Greek, actually show them unusual kindness. It's freezing and raining, and they build this massive bonfire for the survivors.
And this leads to one of the most vivid cultural collisions in the text. Paul is gathering brushwood for the fire, and as he throws it on the heat, a venomous viper fastens its fangs onto his hand.
Oh, man.
Right. And you have to understand the specific worldview of the Maltese islanders. They see a prisoner in chains who just survived a shipwreck suddenly get bitten by a deadly snake.
So they instantly assume he is a murderer.
Exactly. They believe the goddess of cosmic justice named Dyke has tracked him down. Like he escaped the sea, but justice won't let him live.
It's amazing how fast public opinion shifts. They're just waiting for him to swell up and die. But Paul just shakes the snake off into the fire. He suffers no harm.
Not at all.
And when he doesn't die, their worldview completely flips. They go from, he's a cursed murderer, to, he's a literal god.
It's extreme whiplash.
Right. If a whole island started calling me a god after a shipwreck, I might let it go to my head. How does Paul navigate this without losing his grounding?
It requires extreme spiritual maturity. Earlier in his ministry in Lystra, when a crowd called him a god, he panicked and tore his clothes. But here, he's older. He's been through so much.
He doesn't even engage with the hysteria, does he?
No, he just shifts his focus to serving others, because they are taken in by Publius, the chief official of the island, and his father is deathly ill.
With what the sources identify as Malta fever, right?
Yes, caused by a microorganism, usually from contaminated goat's milk. It causes severe fever and dysentery.
But Paul goes in, prays, and heals him, which leads to the healing of the rest of the island's sick.
And in return, the natives supply them with everything they need for the rest of their journey.
It's this beautiful picture of reciprocal grace. The storm tried to destroy them, but instead Paul brings healing to this entire island.
After 3 months of wintering there, the sea is navigable again. They board another Alexandrian ship.
Notably with the figurehead of the twin gods, Castor and Pollux, who were the protectors of sailors.
Right, and they travel up the coast, through Syracuse, Rhegium, and finally Puteoli.
And this brings up a really emotional moment. They're walking toward Rome, and the Roman Christians travel out to meet him. One group walks 64 kilometers to the Forum of Appius. Another walks 19 kilometers to the Three Taverns.
Just to encourage him, you have to feel the weight of that. He is a prisoner, exhausted from a shipwreck and a snake bite, facing the emperor.
It must have been so intimidating.
But seeing these believers validates everything he has suffered. He knows he is not alone.
Which brings us to his actual arrival in Rome. He is placed under house arrest. He can live in his own rented house, but he is chained to a Roman soldier 24 hours a day.
But he doesn't waste a second. 3 days later, he calls the local Jewish leaders to explain his innocence.
He tells them he is bound for the hope of Israel.
And he sets up this massive meeting. From morning till evening, he preaches the kingdom of God. Some are convinced, but others reject the message.
So Paul quotes the prophet Isaiah to them about eyes that do not see and ears that do not hear.
And ultimately declares that the salvation of God has been sent to the Gentiles.
And to me, this is the ultimate plot twist of the entire narrative. The Roman Empire thinks they have Paul imprisoned. They think he's isolated and silenced.
Yeah.
But really, Paul has a captive audience of elite Roman guards rotating through his house every few hours. He is essentially using the empire's own prison system to evangelize the heart of Rome.
Exactly. Divine providence used his arrest to guarantee his safe passage to Rome, give him time to write letters that shaped world history, and place his message directly into the Roman military elite.
It's incredible. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Often the very things that seem perfectly designed to destroy us or restrict our freedom, whether that's a devastating shipwreck, a toxic snake bite, or being chained to a wall, those are the exact vessels and platforms required to fulfill our ultimate purpose.
We all crave a clear route, a straight line on a map.
Mm.
But sometimes the chaos of the storm is the only mechanism that can get us where we need to be.
That is perfectly said. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. And as we say goodbye, always remember God blesses all the listeners.